Hello, it's AlinaGG, and welcome to Inspire Me with AlinaGG. And I'm joined by Matt Banks, formerly from the Daily Bee Show, and now he has a new podcast on the way. So, Matt, please, what have you been up to? Introduce yourself for our listeners.
Hey, Alina, GG. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's going to be a cool chat. I was doing the Daily Bee show, yeah, over 100 episodes a few years ago before me and my partner at the time had our first son. And at that stage, I just like dropped everything like a wet rag and just focused on being a dad and learning the parent life and dad life. And that's mostly what I've been up to for the last well, Zen's 3 next month. So yeah, for the last few years is it's gone pretty quick. But yeah, getting the itch back and getting back into the spirit of, connecting with people, having great high quality conversations, just like you're doing here, and just sharing whatever I can value with the world and other people's stories and values with the world as well. I thought the experience with that podcasting was great. What you're doing here is fantastic, and it just adds so much value to the guests, to the audience, and to everyone in between. So yeah, there's a bit of that. So that'll be coming out. I'm still working on a few concepts, but that'll be coming out pretty soon, I dare say. And other than that, really like when I'm not with Zenny, doing a bit of work, but just deep diving in my own study around things like human behavior, developmental psychology, human psychology, spirituality, and everything in between. It's just been, yeah, a great time for me to fill my being with a lot more knowledge and wisdom and practices. And yeah, it's been a really great time. So I'm looking forwards to getting back out there, getting back on the bandwagon, and just sharing, I guess, the journey that I've been on and the journey of others as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a journey. So, you obviously felt a big transition becoming a parent and the way you interacted with the world. Is that right?
Yeah, well, not as much as what I thought, and not as much as I think other parents had made out. Um, so it was a bit of a shock in that sense. Like I thought there would be a lot more change, and I thought I would be a lot more different. But I was actually, I've joked around with a few friends and been like, how parents say that, oh, you just don't know until you're a parent. And like, yeah, well, that's all bullshit. I'm, I'm on the beans. You actually do know. So, yeah, that was my experience anyway. Is like, they're just other people. Yeah, you might not have had the level of exhaustion from the late nights and that, and a few different bits and pieces that come with new experiences. But all in all, we're all people, and if you care even a little bit about the people around you, then it's just sort of that on a more permanent basis. So yeah.
Yeah, right. Cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it's men's health week this week. What's front of mind in terms of your own mental health and your spiritual awakening?
Yeah. You brought that to my attention. I wasn't even aware that it was Men's Mental Health Week. I think it's just humanity's mental health day every day. uh, but look, for me, I've gone through, the ups and downs myself. I've been to the point of having suicidal thoughts. Like that's probably the depths that my mental health has dipped to. I've had bouts of psychosis, drug induced, granted, but psychosis nonetheless. So I've seen and experienced the mind go to some pretty different places in the past. And I've also been able to see what it takes to develop and grow my mind to certain points as well, which is what's really inspired me to do work like coaching, like podcasting, and sharing as much info as I can with people. So I guess what comes up with Men's Mental Health Week, I did have a look at the website, or like just Googled it today as well. One of the big things that's coming up at the moment that they're trying to push for is to cure loneliness. Apparently, there's something like 41% of the adult population in the full year of 2021 didn't even have sex. So they're not even connecting that much. And something like 43% of men claim to be lonely, like, and just not connected to anyone close enough to them they can share their life or anything with. Um, so I guess on that point of loneliness, again, I can relate to that. there's definitely been moments where I've felt alone and lonely, like I couldn't reach out to anyone. Um, and it's, I guess, in a nutshell, it's taken one, courage and action on my part to go out and prove that perspective wrong, but then also taken time and experiences to gather enough perspectives and different experiences to show that when that comes up as a thought pattern, that that's not actually the absolute truth of the situation. It
Yeah.
might be what I'm feeling, but it may not be my truth as well.
Okay. I've been thinking about this lately as well. Like the ego wants us to be separate, right? Because it's fear based, and the ego is about separation and keeping us safe, right? But our soul is about connection with the whole of life, with everybody. So do you think
So
that's
just
part
to,
of it?
can you share like what your definition of the ego is? Because I know there's
Oh.
different ways of
Okay.
explaining it.
Well, the way I've been observing it myself lately is um okay, so it's addicted to cortisol, to stress, and it just is fear based, not love based. So it's just that reptilian brain that wants to keep us stuck and safe inside a cave and not go out and be attacked by a tiger. But the problem is that for us to grow, we need to get out of our comfort zone. And for us to expand and to awaken our higher selves, we do need to start to breathe into that part of ourselves, which is so much more powerful and more loving. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, great. I love it. Yeah, there's definitely that separation of good and bad, right and wrong, aspect of how we judge our experiences and our reality from that egotistical point of view. Um, there's actually a really great paper that I think everyone should read when it comes to this. It's called the 9 Stages of Ego Development by Suzanne Cook-Reuter. And the way it's explained in there is that human beings are meaning-making machines, right? We make meaning of everything. That's what we're doing on a moment-to-moment basis. And the ego is the filter of which we are filtering everything through that's creating this meaning. And so the more the ego is developed, the more that filter is developed to take on more perspectives, the greater perspective that it's able to take, and the more angles it can view situations and experiences as it develops and as it's living life. So I forget the initial question, but
Well, we were talking about ego and what the definition is actually of ego.
yeah, and how it relates back to loneliness, right?
Okay, yeah.
So, so the
Because it wants us to be separate and think that we're separate and isolated.
when you say it,
Yeah,
what's the it we're speaking about?
the ego.
Ego wants us to be separate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So just to create some context as well, this is another thing that I've been doing in my off time is studying the deconstruction of language as well, being and contemplating the infinite. Right. We're so limited with our capacity to communicate our higher perspectives and understandings and experiences because all we've got to do it with is language. And not only that, but the language that we use when we're using it is being filtered through our audience's lens as well. And so when I say a certain word, someone else hears that word and filters it through their language, where I've used it based on the filter coming out of me in the way that I define this thing. But then it's being filtered a whole new way. So, if I want to get the true meaning of the word cat, then I need to look up, okay, this is the definition of the word cat. Might be a sentence of 5 words. But then if I want to get the true definition of that sentence, I need to look up the definition of each of those words. And then I want to get the true definition of all that. And so this is an infinite experience of deconstruction that never ends. And so there's no actual true meaning to any of the words that we use to explain the thing. So and that's why I do ask, right? It's like pointing to the moon, explaining the moon, but everyone's looking at the finger, trying to understand the moon. All right. It's
That's
it's a bit
deep.
of a mind boggle.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's challenging. Um, so yeah, for me, yeah, I guess the way that I understand the ego is it's the way we make sense of the world. And I guess it's at a lower perspective, it's the way I make sense of myself. And then as you take on more and more perspectives, you start to awaken to your connection to not only your body, but the energy around you. Not only the energy around you, but the things around you, your environment, not only the things around you, but the people that you surrounded yourself with as well. And so your definition of yourself or your ego, your identity becomes more and more expanded until it's like not only the people around you, but your community, your country, the world, the universe. So this is where people talk about the death of the ego, and there's a lot of backlash on, oh, ego can't die or it can die, and there's twos and fro's all over the place. But the way that I say it is that it's not that it's killing an ego. It's just transcending a version of that and incorporating that version in the next version. So like
Yeah.
when you're in grade 1 and you go to grade 2, you don't leave everything in grade 1. You incorporate everything you learn in grade 1 into grade 2, and then incorporate grade 1 and grade 2 into grade 3. And so you do leave grade 1 behind. You kill that level or that year. It does leave your present awareness and your present state. But the values and the lessons you learned there are incorporated in the next one as well.
Mm.
So it's a growth of the ego.
Yes, and also the more evolved you become, the more sophisticated the ego gets as well, though. So this is an interesting concept because we can go further down the spiritual path, and then it's like sometimes it feels even stronger, that resistance. I mean, I guess in some sense, the way I'm defining ego could be seen as resistance versus resonance. You know, it's
Resistance versus resonance.
mm,
Elaborate.
elaborate on that. Hang on, who's interviewing who? No, I'm just joking. You've already interviewed me a few years ago, remember? Okay, what?
You're doing great. We're doing
No,
great.
hang on. You tell me then. Okay, what are we talking about? Resistance, resonance. Okay. Okay, so resistance when you're okay. If we're going to speak like law of attraction terms as well, which I've really been plugging into lately, so it means you're out of the vortex. You're in a very limited three-dimensional reality, and you can't really enjoy life from that space. It's very limited. And then when we become more aligned and allowing of, I guess, this universal consciousness and unconditional love of the divine, then we can flow and create worlds and be in synchronicity. And I've noticed it myself when I'm in that flowing space and state, and I'm just allowing, and I'm joyful, and I'm being with what is. I'm accepting what is. Life is amazing, and it doesn't matter how much, what money and food and all the things, all the material things in that time, in that space reality, I feel really abundant. And so
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, we're all chasing feelings as well. You know, really, why do we do anything? We're chasing a feeling.
Let me ask you. Okay, no. Oh.
No,
Okay,
go on then.
um, so what you're bringing up for me, right, is on one hand, we're talking about complete oneness with your experience in the being in the moment,
Mm.
and just that bliss again, right? The language we've got is so limited, so we might use bliss as one of the explanations for that moment, but it is really primitive to what the actual experience of like absolute love, God consciousness, and blissfulness is when you're in that state, right?
Well, not necessarily. I've experienced both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, okay, and so when we're talking about these models of growth or these separations, when we're talking about relativity at that stage. Everything's relative. Everything is separate and relative, coming from relative perspective. So, I
So
guess
why
in a
does okay,
simplest,
Matt, why does that even matter? Why I feel like you're really latching onto that. Why does that matter?
the relativity versus
Yeah,
the,
and why things might mean different things to different people. We're never going to avoid that. We're all it's true. We've all got our filters. We're all individuals that are connected, but we have our reference points for when we were children, from when we were born, and certain things happened, and then you know we attribute meaning, and then we fear certain things and other people might not fear. Some people are scared of dogs. Some people got bitten by a dog. I got bitten by a dog in the face, but I'm not afraid of dogs. But it's like we store this stuff in our body, don't we?
and so you're asking, why does it matter, the
Yeah.
difference of how we make things mean? Yeah. So what you just mentioned before about how, as we're going through certain experiences, we have fears or we have resistances, and these things come up, but then the ego tries to trick us as well, and it's so easy to trick ourselves in those different stages as well. When we're not focused on, or if we're not holding truth as a higher value of ours, or something to work towards, something to attain, or something to experience, then it is really easy. And the self-deception mechanisms that we use and are used against us by our own mind are really prevalent. And so in order to be hyper vigilant and aware of our own self-deception mechanisms, um, it takes an awareness. Like, what is consciousness, right? Another word for consciousness is awareness. So are you being hyper aware of the language that is coming out of your mouth, the language that is being used in your mind, or are you unconscious and unaware and just allowing it to just be what it's going to be, right? So a great thing to check out is the icicle experiment. I forget his name, Mazuro Mozimoto, something like
Oh
this.
yeah,
He
the
did
Japanese
icicle.
water crystals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he put the word love on a
Yeah.
water crystal. He put the word hate. Did all these different types of words, right, to see the resonance and what they did, and they all came back as an expression, a replica of that expression, that word. So it's not just spirituality and woo woo now, this type of stuff. Now, that's another point. A lot of things that people think I'm just spiritual is actually being backed by science now. So a
Yeah.
lot of the spiritual woo woo stuff that used to be spiritual woo woo is now just scientifically based factual evidence. So it's no longer a belief system. It's now a it's now backed by science, right?
Yeah.
So the words that we use matter.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
they
I do
create
agree.
matter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because words create worlds, and your word is your wand, and um, they carry energy and they carry intention, and they are powerful. Agreed.
What is a
Because
word? You spell a word, right? It's a spell. You're casting a spell every time you use it.
yeah, it's energy. Yeah, yeah, it is.
And so when
Transformative
we're making,
language. Transformative language is really important. And it's something I try and be aware of myself and teach my kids. And then I notice it sometimes I observe it in other people. And like, especially if someone's saying something really negative about themselves or the world or others, it's like, it's just, yeah. And we all do it, but it's having that awareness. And I think it is super important. So it's a great point. Thank you for,
hmm,
yeah.
okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The the to bring it back to the Men's Mental Health Week and the loneliness, and to sort of tie all this into a bit of a bow, I feel like the at its one of its simplest forms, understanding the yin yang sign is a really powerful process to go through, and to understand relativity and the absolute nature of reality, because mental health is essentially, or a any sort of jaded, skewed view of the world is a disconnected one. There's something that's not connected. There's something that's not whole within that person, and they're jaded, there's essentially a resistance to something in their world. So when you look at the yin yang sign, you've got the black, you've got the white, and they're two fish basically chasing each other's tail. And when we're jaded to some part of our reality, it's because we're standing in black, looking at black, and only wanting white. We're just wanting white, and we're hating on black, or vice versa. But when you take a step back and you can recognize that life at a relative level, universal law of relativity is that there is always a polarity. There's always an equal and opposite to anything. And so where there is a black, there needs to be a white. There always is simultaneously. And they must coexist, and they do coexist together. So yes, there is a negative, and simultaneously, yes, there is a positive, and simultaneously they are one. So all dualities must essentially collapse into a non-dual state as well. So this is where, as the ego develops and is able to take on more and more perspectives, where I once was in a low mental state, and I struggled with certain aspects of life, and I was hating on certain aspects of life that affected my mental health. It was because I was standing in the black, only wanting the white. Eventually, I was able to expand to two perspectives and go, all right, I can see where white's coming from. I can see where black's coming from. I can kind of see them there, and I can make peace with that. I'd rather that, but it's all good. I can sort of see it. So that's two perspectives. But then now, when I can step out of that and then see a third perspective, be like, not only do I see the negative, the black perspective, and I see the white perspective, but I see them as a holistic perspective as well. And so now it is balanced, and I'm whole with that experience. So I don't judge it as bad or good, or one or the other. I experience as one experience that balances itself out.
Yeah, great.
And that's how I feel like that alone, contemplating that for 50 hours will help mental health.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And yeah, the energy of acceptance it can precede forgiveness, and it can precede, well, I guess then you can be clear on what you can change and what you can't change. And what you can't change, it's great to accept. And what you can change, then go do it and stop complaining about it. And then there's a really great quote about that, but I can't remember who it is. And then it's having the wisdom to know the difference between what we can change and what we can't change. Yeah.
Yes, that was the Bible.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's a good book to quote. There's a lot of wisdom in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of the things you touched on was how, maybe you touched on it, maybe I just thought of it, but people are either doing well materialistically in the world, in the dream, but they're seemingly doing well, but there's a lot of unfulfillment there. Or conversely, they're deep in the spiritual practices, and they've done a lot of the work, internal work, and they've elevated their perspective to a certain level, but they haven't done the developmental work in the dream. And so they're like rubbing sticks together trying to make ends meet, or they're not supporting themselves or their family, or they're struggling in that sense. So I see there's these two segments of our society at the moment: one who's hyper success driven, one who's hyper spirituality and internally driven. But what I'm trying to do, and what I'm putting together with this new podcast and process I'm putting together, is to bridge that gap for both of those communities, to bring them together, to share the importance of bringing those two parts together, and showing the importance of focusing on both development and awakening simultaneously, so that one, you can live the best life in this dream space, in the Maya, in the relative space that we have, and simultaneously awaken to greater perspectives and live a fulfilled life internally and externally as well.
Wow, that's the sweet spot right there. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Right. I mean, you could have so many cool conversations about that. Yeah. And what a great
Well,
intention. And yeah. What's that?
I was just saying, it's just from my own experience. I
Mm.
earned a lot of money in certain areas and I felt super unfulfilled. And then I did the complete opposite and went down this big spiritual journey and awoke to a lot of aspects that I didn't know was possible. And I was rubbing sticks together trying to make ends meet. And so um, I feel like I've come full circle and recognized the importance of both now and want to share that and develop that and be the role model for people moving forwards in that. But there's a lot of role models out there already that I can speak to and share their stories and their journeys as well. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That is so cool. Yeah. That sounds amazing because yes, we are spiritual beings, but we are in a physical body, in a physical world. And I myself, I'm a real ideas person, but now it's time for me to really bring them into this physical reality because otherwise they're just up in the ether and then they can't really do much for anyone up there anyway. And I guess that's part of this podcast and why I'm so into it and feel so driven and with it because I mean it's just fun connecting with community. Actually, it's making me feel connected to tie back to that loneliness piece, that you were saying with people. Like if you just get out of your own way and start having a conversation and explore and open your mind to new possibilities, like the yin yang and all those things, and go, okay, well, do I really know everything I'm meant to know now? Do I really know it all? Because, what's the point? Because there's always something new to learn. There's so much to learn and explore, really. That's the whole journey. So you may as well
The more you
enjoy
learn, the
it.
more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, gosh, yeah, absolutely. So, yes, well, we were talking about a few things before we started recording tonight, and a topic that I've noticed so many people, like, famous, successful people, everyone's talking about relationships and conscious relationships. And it's definitely been front of mind for myself. So maybe we could dive into all of that now if you feel like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Conscious relating. I've learnt a lot myself through a lot of mistakes that I've made along the way, um, and am no way perfect in that sense. So I'll put that as the first caveat before we jump into that. And I'm not a professional in the area,
Oh, that
but
doesn't matter. It's more about, I guess our experiences and like what it means. Let's just talk about it from a human level, from what it means to you and what do you desire in a relationship? Remember we were talking about that, and then um what choices can you make? Because it's funny when you start to go down this path of going, I'm only available for conscious relationships. um it's
mm,
funny what falls away and how life changes and how it really opens up, I find.
yes, I agree. What I've experienced is, look, I'm at a point where I do incorporate the darkest reaches of the galaxy as myself and beyond. Right. So it's really interesting. I remember when that started to come into my awareness, um, how that played out in relationships.
Are you talking about your shadow?
No, I'm talking about um, the non-dual aspect of reality that I'm a part of. And so when I'm relating with someone or I'm in a relationship with someone or even just communicating with another person, there's now always listening to it from two perspectives of of I'm listening because I want to respond and not sound like a crazy person, and and the other one is um, I'm actually here speaking to myself right now on a larger perspective, and so at all times I'm one having a conversation with myself and having a conversation with the other person as the relative me Matthew version, Um, so when it comes to relating with others, I guess I'm so hyper aware now of my shadows, and so I the purpose I see in relating with others is for growth, right? It's one from my own individual perspective. The purpose of me here is to be authentic and live authentically every single moment I possibly can, warts and all. And so by doing that, what that's going to bring up as I relate with other people and communicate with other people is it's going to either trigger them or they're going to trigger the shit out of me. And it's going to bring my shadows up for me. And so with those experiences, my soul then gets an opportunity to evolve and grow, because that's when I get to realize, all right, this person has brought up this thing that I don't like. It pisses me off, it frustrates the shit out of me. It just makes me want to punch him in the face, whatever it could be, like bringing out within me. I've actually never been in a fight. I'm not violent, but others do. And so that's when I've got the opportunity to either resist it and push it away and allow it to just come up in another form or fashion, or walk into that and learn to own, love, be grateful, and accept that aspect of myself and integrate that part within me. And so it seems a bit detached from the notion that we've been programmed to, and the way we've been programmed to think about relationships, the whole Disney notion of falling in love and living happily ever after, and all this jazz, right?
But we can have
It is
both.
definitely.
It doesn't have to be this or that. I think it's great to use a conscious spiritual relationship as a tool, as a spiritual tool for growth, where both people are growing individually and together. And in my definition, I would see it as connecting with each other, the divine, and ourselves, and then it's growing. And yeah, triggers come up because it is doing the work on like, and so triggers will come up because it's something that's active and it's something that's alive and it's something that's real, and there's vulnerability there because it's an essential ingredient, right? And I was speaking
Where
about
the
this the other
authenticity
day.
comes in.
What's that?
That's where the authenticity comes in.
Yeah.
You as an individual showing up authentically, often that you're going to be very, 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 very vulnerable if you're going to be true with yourself and be like, for me to be authentic in this moment, it is going to take my most vulnerable state to let myself express this authentically, because we don't want to do that. Like that goes against our natural instincts.
It does.
We want to be safe and comfortable.
It's right. And numb. And like when things are painful and uncomfortable, it's just like so habitual to numb the pain and not feel that uncomfortable feeling. But when
Yeah.
you start to gradually choose truth, like you're saying, and like, I'm basically, having a break for alcohol for a month. So I haven't had a drink for a month. And it's interesting. Like I've noticed when I have been triggered, or I've been in the kitchen or something's been happening with the kids or whatever. And then I was like, oh, I'd normally think, oh, maybe I would like a wine while I'm cooking dinner now. But because I made that commitment to go, I'm not having a wine for a month. I'm having a break. I get to observe when those feelings come up and what the energy as it starts to build. And it's interesting because yeah, sometimes it is uncomfortable, but then if you sit with it and observe it, it actually can pass. If you face it and connect with it, then it can sort of release, and then this too shall pass. So all the different uncomfortable feelings can pass if you give them permission. But if you grip onto them, which it's all learning, and sometimes we still do that, but it's like sometimes you have a choice and sometimes it feels like you don't, and I guess that's the human experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, what you bring up for me, I remember with one of my earliest partners, we were together for about 8 years, and I remember we would have an argument, and it would be, for argument's sake, let's say like a month before we would sort our stuff out together. Like there'd be tension within our relationship for that long. But gradually, as we worked together, grew together, learned more about each other, learned more about ourselves, that cut down to a fortnight, and then down to a week, and then down to a couple of days, and then to a day, and then to a few hours, and then to like 10 minutes, and then to in the conversation, and then to a point where we could be so self-responsible that we would show up with so much compassion and self-responsibility that we would be able to sort it out whatever triggers were coming up for either one of us in the moment, right? And so I think that is another point to make, especially with the mental health week thing, is people are really, really hard on themselves and they expect so much from themselves, and they don't. And this is a part of being authentic and honest with them, with yourself as well, is that if you haven't taken the time to study or learn or understand certain aspects of your own psyche or your own behavior or others, right? Then how can you expect yourself to be able to sort shit out like on a dime? Like it's a skill. It is a skill that takes painstaking experience and training and learning to go and do. And so not only that, but at least what you can do is start to recognize your own patterns, and then just be compassionate enough with yourself to be like, I'm at where I'm at. Tomorrow I'm going to do that 1 minute better or 1 day better, right? And just being aware of that and celebrating the wins. Oh my God, like the fact that I'm even being aware of this right now is already 90%, like a step ahead, 90% of the population who aren't even being aware, that are just living by the seat of their pants, instinctively, emotionally, just letting it out, right? So the awareness, that being conscious about it and being aware of it is a massive first step. But then if all you do is just take the pressure off yourself and be okay being where you're at, I think is a massive step for improving anyone's mental health around whatever they're going through. And then being okay going through the rigmarole of learning to improve. Like, how long did it take you to learn anything? You know, we went to school for 12 years and learnt maths, but yet majority of us are not like epic mathematicians, you know? And we did it for 12 years. Waste of
Yeah.
time. But yeah.
So it's like that emotional regulation piece and taking responsibility for our feelings and emotions. And yeah, that's a
Yeah.
big part of
I
it.
mean, for me, I to this day, and I've done it since I was pretty young, I would be able to identify either one thing that I recognize about myself that was a weakness that I really like was causing me pain that I needed to improve on. And I'll go out and find people, study that specific thing, that one thing. Just don't forget about the rest of it. I'm just want to focus on this thing. Or I'd focus on a strength that I wanted to develop, something that I wanted to get better at, something that I wanted to make a strength of mine. And so I'll go out and find people that excelled at that and that I could learn from about that. And just like one character trait at a time, built upon them, you know, and eliminated shit ones and built on great ones. And I've still got like infinite of them both to go, you know. But yeah, again, consciousness, awareness. What are you aware of? What are you doing in an unaware state? Like just asking questions like that. What am I doing unconsciously? What am I not aware of? Start with the shit that's really painful. Go from there. What about this am I not aware of and that I can be more aware of, that I could learn more about? And my kids giving me the shits because they're like not going to bed and not eating their food. Have I actually studied child psychology and the development of a 6-year-old child if I have a 6-year-old child and what they might be going through? Probably not. Yet I'm kicking and screaming and bitching to the girls about it. But you're not being compassionate for where you're at. You haven't done a study. You haven't gone through the rigmarole of figuring it out yet. And that's, yeah, life's a never ending journey of learning, you know. But most people put down the books at year 12 or after they finish high school. They go get a job. Bummer.
Good point. Yeah, self-study, that is important in an ongoing journey. Mm.
Mm. If you want to
Yes.
improve, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Well, I think
Only if you want to.
it will evolve or dissolve, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
pick
Well,
pick one. Yeah, nothing
yeah.
stays the same. Change is the only constant.
Yeah. yeah, I'd like to see, emotional intelligence, meditation, self-love, these types of things being actual classes in primary schools and high schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Communication, like what they're learning, geography, history, mathematics, for what? Doesn't set them up for success.
Yeah.
Doesn't give them the skills they need to succeed in life. So yeah, there's a big push for the education system, I think, which will take quite a while, but it's a big opportunity for everyone. But us adults that know that we've already gone through that and have the capacity to see that, and have things like YouTube that has thousands and thousands of hours of free content to teach you this stuff.
Mm.
Like we've got no excuses now.
Well, from my journey, as a parent, I've noticed that the most powerful way to teach my kids is through embodiment and leading by example. And if I am listening to something on mindset and they're exposed to it, and it's interesting because they soak it up, and I can see evidence of that lately.
Yeah.
And it's not through me preaching to them or saying, think this way, do this, don't do that. It's just me on that journey, striving to be better. And then, listening to those resources, because there's so much out there now. There's so much fantastic, so many great podcasts. There's so much to draw upon. And then yeah, they soak it up. And isn't that great that they can have those seeds planted for their journey? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things you learn in like the personal development space, or even before that, if you do sales type work, is something like 60% of communication is the words that you use. 30 something percent is the tone of your voice, and the other 60+% is your body language. And that's just like basic human behavior, right? So you got people and parents trying to spruik their message and feed their message with words into their kids and into their people, into their employees, but yet they're setting a shit example. So what they're actually communicating is terrible, and their words mean jack shit. So where are we doing that for ourselves? Where are we telling ourselves all this like airy fairy fluffy great stuff, yet we're behaving in a way that is not conducive to what we're saying as well, because
Mm.
we do it to ourselves first before we do it to others. And this is again back to be brutally honest with yourself. Like stand in front of the fucking mirror and be brutally honest with yourself. Majority of clients I get, that's one of the first things I get them to do. They struggle. I struggled standing in front of the mirror and honestly looking at yourself and bringing up questions and questioning yourself in certain areas.
Well, yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think that takes a lot of courage. Um, but also, I mean, I've struggled more with self-doubt. So for me, it's probably time to go, well, actually, oh, I have done this and I have learnt this and I can share this and this is of value. I've sort of always come from the other way, is like, yeah, I guess perhaps deep down just feeling a bit different and not on some level, maybe not good enough, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I'm with you on that one. That's one of my big ones too. Yeah, self
yeah,
doubt and lack of self worth been huge for me.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's really fun, isn't
I
it?
think that's great. Yeah, one of the things that I loved sorry, that it was shared by Tom Bilyeu on Impact Theory, was that um, this lady stood up and she's like, I just have a lot of trouble just believing in myself. No matter what I do, no matter how good like other people tell me I just don't believe in myself. And he goes, that's great. You don't need to believe in yourself. He goes,
Why not?
all you need, yeah, all you need to believe and know is that you are the most adaptive creature ever to walk the face of the planet. And that anything that you want to learn, you will be able to learn as a species and as part of that. So you don't need to believe in yourself. You just need to know that you're a part of the species that is the most adaptive creature to ever walk the face of the planet. Decide what you want to go and learn it, because you will just learn it. The only thing that will stop you from learning it is if you just don't put in the time and don't learn it. You don't even need to believe in yourself, and you'll still learn it.
Truth bomb.
Boom. That's again, right? That's another perspective. Am I holding my perspective as my truth, or am I open minded enough to go and gather other perspectives and to actually hold another perspective? Not just, oh, yeah, I'm open minded and I'll listen to what you say, but I think you're full of shit. No, I'm radically open minded enough to put myself in that perspective and be in it equally as much as my own and equally as much as that one. Like, open-minded is one thing, radical open-mindedness is another step. Most people aren't even open-minded enough to put themselves in your shoes. That's how closed-minded most people are.
Yeah.
It's
So
tough.
you're talking about empathy.
Talk about open-mindedness.
Yeah, but to put yourself in someone else's shoes requires empathy.
That's understanding where they're from.
Yeah, well, empathy is next level then.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of ways to help everyone, ourselves. It's pretty
mm,
cool. That's what excites me about it. Is like every next person you speak to, they've got an amazing story.
yeah,
They've met some amazing people. They've learned some amazing modalities. It is endless.
it
But
is.
unfortunately, like in the depths of mental health, it takes the courage of the individual to make the first step, to take action, to ask for help, or to put themselves in an uncomfortable place. It's so hard. Like, it's so hard. I get that. It's hard. Like, yeah, it's heavy and it's hard. But
Mm,
once you open that door, the world opens up, which is awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
People like
like
you in
you're,
it, sharing awesome
what's
shit with
that?
everyone.
Sorry. What did you say?
I said it opens up to people like you that are sharing amazing information from heaps of people. It's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like what you just said is going to touch someone who hears this. Yeah. Yeah,
Hopefully.
it could shift something for someone out there. Because when you're feeling really flat and low, it's like it could perhaps take more than just one step or one reach out or one change to get out of that funk. But it does start with that one step. Yeah.
Yeah. And to just touch on the ego again with that, when we've built, when the ego's built itself or this identity, another way I like to think of the ego is like, those rubber band balls, the
Yeah.
balls that are made up with all those rubber bands. So that's our ego, right? Our ego is every experience we've had up until now is a new rubber band on this ball, and each rubber band represents like a belief or an experience that we've had. And so, in order to create a new perspective or develop that ego, you need to like rip some of these off. And it's painful and doesn't want to. You want to rip them off, right? And so when you start to tear at these experiences you've had to create some new ones, what it often does is that it's called the ego backlash, and it reefs you back into that experience because that's its comfort zone. Even though you might be uncomfortable, you might feel shit, you might feel sad, might feel depressed, might be all this, and you want to get out of it so bad. Actually, it's your comfort zone, and so when you try and move out of it, is uncomfortable. Is you're moving into your discomfort zone, and so your ego and your mind will play mental tricks on you. This is where all the yeah the games come into it, that the self-deception mechanisms come in to reef you back into where you are currently. It's
Mm,
hard, right? So another thing to be aware of is like when you're aware of that process itself, like another perspective is just, okay, I'm doing this new thing. I'm expecting it to be uncomfortable because it's not where I'm at right now. I'm expecting my mind to try and play tricks on me to pull me back into what I was doing to keep me in my comfort zone. I'm expecting to even want to go back there. And so because I'm aware of all that, I know that I just need to keep moving forwards toward this uncomfortable position, being aware of all that shit that's going to happen. And so it makes it more malleable and more flexible within yourself to be able to move through that and into that. Whereas without that knowledge, you're just going to be like, throw it around this way, that way. I mean, pull back here. I'm trying to go over there. I'm getting pulled back here. Why does this keep happening? I just don't know why. But little things like that, it's like, oh, okay, now I know why. Cool.
Definitely. That's a key. That's a big key. Yeah. It's a pattern, it's habitual. And then there's also the body physiology part where, on some level, we're addicted to that cortisol, that stress hormone. So sometimes we want to have a stressful experience because it gives us a bit of a rush. It makes us feel alive.
Yep. Yeah. And another perspective, understand your own biology. Yeah. Like it's great to know that stuff, to know
It
why
is.
your body does what it does, why some things get tweaked, why some things get knocked down, why you're low on energy after lunch.
Mm,
Yeah. Why you feel like, yeah, it's great to know
yeah,
that stuff.
definitely. And if we get triggered and we've got this feeling in our body, it could be just a feeling from the past that's just kind of repeating. So it's actually not even about what's going on in your current space-time reality. It's just like it's on repeat, just like a body memory that replays in
Like
there.
generational trauma
Yeah, just
or a past
anything.
life.
Yeah. Yeah, just a past unpleasant experience. You could be like, yeah, it could be big trauma, little trauma, all those things, but whatever, it's a feeling and it's unpleasant, and it's just in your body. And that's why maybe, were you talking about breath work before, and things like that could be good to help shift the energy as well, right?
Yeah. I think try anything once. It's something I
Mm.
often hear myself saying. And I think if there's one theme that's come out of our chat so far, it's that the importance of taking on different perspectives and modalities. And there's infinite amount of options out there, an infinite amount of information out there. Um, you can't hurt yourself by learning something new, you know? So maybe instead of scrolling tonight, look up something you don't know anything about. Look up a new modality. Look up an emotion that you're struggling with. Look up an experience that you're struggling with. Look up a strength that you might want to improve on. It won't hurt. It
Yeah,
won't
that's
it
great.
won't push you further back.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you so
Mm.
much. Yeah,
Mm.
this is great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So, how
Well,
can people find you, Matt, and your new podcast?
um, yet to be launched, but Matt Banks is all my socials, MatBankes. So that's, yeah, all my socials is where I'm at the moment. I'm not very active on there as I'm really just getting back out into the big wide world, but will be more and more as time goes on. Um, and yeah, just reach out, stay tuned for the podcast launch. I do see some coaching clients, so if that's something that people are interested in, I'm open to having a chat as well. But that's very limited, just based on my time at the moment. But obviously happy to chat to anyone that wants to discuss some stuff. And if I can't help, I'll definitely be able to point people in the direction of someone that can as well. Very well connected, and so yeah, just happy to reach out and just make new friends as well.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Saya.
AlinaGG, thank you.